Hey guys, I thought I would just mess around and compile a whole bunch of things that just like highlight news stories, the corruption and all that kind of stuff we see in our world. To be quite honest, I would like to make a political channel. I think I could do a lot with that, but I don't know if I should because I just don't feel like it's the right time, and I don't know. Excuse me. What I mean is, not for the sake of politics, for the sake of showing lies. But because let's face it, most of the people in this world right now who are leaders are rich. They're all rich. I looked up each individual leader, the important ones in this world, the ones we hear about, important in that regard. And a lot of them have a lot more than $1 million, let's just say. So there's a lot of reason. There's a lot of reasons for them to be corrupt. I want to say something before I get to this. This is like a compilation. I don't mean to scare you, okay? If you live in the States, hey, this could be all Europe for all I know. We hear of all the migrants also in Europe, Italy, right? And they're already implanted in all other countries. But let's just talk about the United States. Just the States. Got a border wide open. It's been open for 4 years. Virtually unchecked, right? We see trainloads of people coming. This is so very dangerous. And I thought about writing a letter to the Canadian and American government to do my own assessment, because I know a lot about weapons, I know a lot about war, I know a lot about strategy and tactics. The question is, what would I do if I had my chance to, if I was a different person, let's say I was on the devil's side. And by the way, I believe where we are right now, like Russia and China are against the US because it's, especially China, because it's a judgment, right? You look in the Book of Kings, whenever they weren't in Judges, or wherever through the Bible, when they're not doing good, God uses other people against them. There's a lot of people who hate the United States, and any country on this globe can. They don't have to penetrate the border, they just have to walk over the border. That means they can bring in nuclear weapons, they can bring in SAMs, surface-to-air missiles, they can take jets out of the sky. This is what you don't know. There could be, like the port facilities are virtually unchecked in some sectors. Anti-aircraft missiles, there could be 20,000 of them. They could take out every single one. But this is what concerns me. You're talking about all these men coming through, and I watched a bit of Congress today, and it was John Kennedy saying, how many of these people are children, and the Homeland Security is not answering because they don't know. But let's just say a country is controlling this against America, right? Let's just say it's China. And they have a trigger that they can pull anytime they want. Even without weapons, if there were, guys, we're talking about millions of very fit men, gangbangers from other countries, if each one of them, let's just say 10,000 of them, that's a small number, and you hear of the Chinese nationalists coming in, men. Sorry, I'm getting out of breath. I'm always more out of breath when I start my videos. I usually do it when I just start my dinner. But what if just 10,000, that's a low number, each one of them had one lighter? What if there was a city of 1 million or even 5 million? Can you picture them fanning out? One city, 500 people. They could burn the city down. The cops couldn't do anything. That's how easy. This is what we're talking about. This is where we are. This is why you secure your border. Like, we're talking mega life and death. Just lighters. That's all they need. Because, I mean, and I wish I did write that, but I'm sure it would have been ignored, or they would have just flagged me or something. But I knew how serious it could be long ago. Anyways, let's start with some of this stuff. Let's start exposing some of the stuff we already know about.
Check this out. Walmart profit surges. Kohl's revenue plummets as Corona sorts retail winners and losers. It's all about a few millionaires, billionaires, and trillionaires left standing when the dust settles from the bomb drop of this pandemic right here. It's all about power and control. Who will be left standing? Walmart became one of the few lifelines to millions of people as the virus spread, leading to surging profit and sales during the fiscal first quarter. Same thing with Tesla, same thing with Amazon. Jeff Bezos has pocketed over $33 billion since this has happened. That's why I told you guys that this was manufactured. The high heads over this were standing to profit as they wipe out.
Guys, I know it was planned. That was $30 billion, by the way. I think he made more than $100 billion in all. It could be much more than that. It could be double of what he was. And this goes the same for all these big, and then what do? They squeeze out the middle class. That's what they do. All the mom and pop stores gone. To me, it certainly seems like it was planned. And what comes to mind, the Bible verse, is they haven't paid, their wages. I forget exactly where that is at this very second. God's angry because they haven't paid their wages. I think that may be in Revelation. I'll just let this keep playing. That's what's happening. How much do you think an Amazon deliverer gets?
All of their competition and all of the small mom and pop shops that had to close down, ask yourself why Walmart got to stay open. And stay to the end and you're going to understand exactly why Walmart got to stay open. Remember, Walmart is government backed. So the government was
essential,
pushing for everybody to go there. You never really heard them tell you to go anywhere else. Go to Walmart and stock up on bottled water. Go to Walmart and stock up on tissue. Go to Walmart and get your food and your necessities and everything. So they had the backing of the entire government on top of their 5,000 plus stores and already strong brand. All right, their only competitor for online sales was Amazon and delivery, okay? So they became one of the few lifelines to millions of people during the spread. Online sales in the U.S. jumped 74% for the quarter at April 30th, okay?
Okay, I think this is Walmart, sorry.
10%. Now, guess what?
I was speaking of Amazon.
I'm pretty sure you guys
I'll get to that.
There, since this happened, you have your little face mask on, and they make it seem like nobody's at the store because you got to stand in line to go in and everything. But as you just saw right here, same store sales rose 10% at U.S. Walmart stores. So the in-store sales in-store sales has skyrocketed since this has started, even though we've been ordered to stay in.
I don't want to make it too long, but you know what the thing is? My city, Ottawa, in the hospitals anyways, because I had to go there for my back. Like one of the last hospitals in the world still forcing you to wear masks. Just ridiculous. They say only in the emergency areas. But all the hallways you don't have to wear your mask. People are wearing their masks still in their cars. Let's move on to something else.
We know what it's going to do to business. It's going to be a disaster. It is just going to be an absolute mess. Not to mention the fact that there's a spiritual side. People were born to be free, especially in America. They appreciated it maybe more than a lot of folks.
These are old.
And they need that freedom.
They're going to fail tremendously. I mean, they're even in Ohio, they said 1 out of every 7 mom and pop shops are closing.
Giant Amazon said Monday it'll hire 100,000 more workers to meet growing demand. Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos has made an extraordinary amount of money during the crisis. He saw his personal wealth increase by $48 billion between just March and June alone. He's now the first person in the world to be worth
March, April, May, June, 4 months, $40 billion. And you wonder why there's problems in this world?
$200 billion. Bezos has made so much, in fact, that Oxfam estimates he could give all 876,000 Amazon employees a one-time $105,000 bonus and still come away with as much money as he had before the pandemic. This comes as a new report documents how Amazon set prices for essential products during the crisis at levels that would violate price gouging laws in many states. Public Citizen found Amazon marked up some products by as much as 1,000%. For example, disposable face masks sold for $40 instead of $4. Prices shot up.
I would go on Amazon and the toilet paper would be like, you know, let's just say it was 24 rolls, $20 Canadian. It could be like 80 or $100. I'm looking and there's still price gouging going on. Like wow. There's not much. What's he gonna do? Get a little speeding ticket for it? I'll tell you something very quickly. If you anywhere you look on the internet, you say, how much does it cost to solve Africa's starving issues for 1 year? And you're going to come across the same answer. It's $5 billion. And I don't think it's to feed all Africa. It's the people who are in trouble, right? That's what I believe it is. But it's $5 billion. So that extra he made in that 4 months, he could feed them for almost a decade. He could solve the Africa problem for almost a decade. But you don't see these people doing it. I don't want to come I don't want to come down on people and to say they're bad people. But you don't hear good things. You don't hear about them giving to the poor. I don't have much to say about them. Any of them. Philanthropy. I think you end up getting more money back by tax exemptions. You know, like I understand if you don't have that much money and you have your receipts, you know, claim this, claim that. You know, like when I give to something, I don't claim it. I don't.
Up amidst shortages for pandemic-related supplies in February and March and are still high. This is New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announcing in early March that the state had started using prisoner labor to make hand sanitizer.
because you can't get it on the market. And when you get it, it's very, very expensive. Also, to Purell and Mr. Amazon and Mr. eBay, if you continue the price gouging, we will introduce our product, which is superior to your product, and you don't even have the floral bouquet.
I don't think he cares.
So stop price gouging.
For more on this new report,
He doesn't care.
Prime gouging, how Amazon raised prices to profit from the pandemic. We're joined by Alex Harmon, competition policy advocate for public safety.
So with AI, right? And these are the people who are like Elon Musk, like the people who own all these big companies. They're the people who are releasing AI to us. So if it wasn't big enough, if it wasn't bad enough that they don't, you know, that they're taking all the middle class jobs, you know, even my beeswax candles, not long ago they started to develop factories making huge amounts of them. I'm not kidding you, but my product is still better. Taking jobs from people having to close down shop because of Amazon. And if it wasn't bad enough, this is how greedy they are, that they will continue to still, they don't care about the person. They're going to use AI. They're going to use machines, right? And they're going to phase us out. And then we'll be on government help us.
Rise here in the U.S. Walmart is one of the leading retailers trying to keep up with consumer demand. Executive Vice President of Corporate Affairs Dan Bartlett is here to share more on how Walmart is responding to the crisis. Dan, thanks for being with us. There are obviously so many issues affecting retailers right now. What would you say is the biggest impact the coronavirus has had on Walmart?
Well, the sheer demand of the public right now has been
Poor
unprecedented.
Walmart.
If you just go back over the last 10 days or so, the pattern of shopping has been enormous. And in the early days, it was really focused on cleaning products, paper goods, and those things. And then as a lot of the talk about shelter in place and those things, and people seeing that this was going to be for a sustained period of time, and at the same time, restaurants started shutting down, a massive push to buying food and consumables.
You are so correct. Every time I've gone to the grocery store, my hats are off to the people there. They are on the front lines, truly, of this as well. So how are you preventing the spread of the virus, not only to your employees, but to the people then also coming and purchasing items from your stores?
So, as many people believe, it was planned, especially the Christian world. I think a lot of people believe that. Think of all the spheres of the world where if they knew ahead of time, right, that they knew they could have made a lot of money. Big pharma. Think of all the meds people would be taking because they're trapped indoors, you got anxiety, taking this and that. You know, all of a sudden you have new pains, all this type of, you get Tylenol. Just goes on and on and on like that. You know, it's just a big revolving door. It's globalism.
It's a very dynamic process. Obviously, across our chain, we have severely increased and greatly enhanced the cleaning protocols we have in place. Obviously, the protocols with our associates themselves about washing their hands, keeping their hands. We're also...
So Amazon and Walmart have raked in billions in additional profits during the pandemic and shared almost none of it with their workers. Right there, that's the verse I was talking about in the Bible. God gets angry when they don't pay people correctly. Jeff Bezos and Walmart heirs have grown 116 billion richer during the pandemic, and I don't know when this was written. Look, December 22nd, 2020. They got so much richer. Oh, wow. During the pandemic, 35 times the total hazard pay. I don't know. Let's see what the total is. 35 times the total hazard pay given to more than 2.5 workers. I don't even know what that means. Record profits for the biggest company as well as immense wealth for their founders and largest shareholders. That's what this world is about. Raked in billions, pandemic. Yeah, while frontline workers who risk their lives every day for wages can't even barely support their family. Let's just look at this. Amazon, Walmart have could have more than quadrupled the COVID-19 compensation to frontline workers and still earn more profit than last year. Amazon. They're doing a comparison, additional profit versus cost of COVID-19 compensation in the billions. Wow, man. 4.5, 4.1 times more. Like, they're just... Anyways, just going through all this, we know there's just like... Since March, this is, that was, I'd say, June 2020. What was this? December 22nd, so at the end of the year. Since March, the fortune of Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, the richest person on the planet, has increased by $75.6 billion. Increased by 42 times the cost of all pandemic hazard pay that Amazon will have, given its roughly 1 million workers to the end of this year. The wealth of Alice, Jim, and Rob Walton, billionaire heirs to the Walmart fortune and their country's richest family, have grown by $40.7 billion since the start of the pandemic. 26 times the total amount of pandemic hazard pay Walmart will have provided to more than its 1.5 million associates by the end of 2020. They made a killing. What disproportionate, wow, disparities. That's where I'm going to stop. There's just, we know all this stuff already. They hardly pay people.
After consultation with premiers from all provinces and territories, after speaking with opposition leaders, the federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations. I want to be very clear. The scope of these measures will be time-limited, geographically targeted, as well as reasonable and proportionate to the threats they are meant to address.
What I get from Justin Trudeau, I'm not the only person who says this, okay, authoritarian, but I just get this feeling of it's like drama, like an act, and isn't just like just the way, I don't want to say too much, I suppose. You should see some of the parliamentary debates where he's literally yelling at the top of his lungs.
The Emergencies Act will be used to strengthen and support law enforcement agencies at all levels across the country. This is about keeping Canadians safe, protecting people's jobs, and restoring confidence in our institutions. These tools include strengthening their ability to impose fines or imprisonment. The government will designate, secure, and protect places and infrastructure that are critical to our economy and people's jobs, including border crossings and airports.
We know this was all not true because it was just ruled in court against Justin Trudeau. There was no reason to do this at all. It was a peaceful protest, and he called us all misogynist and racist, that we were a fringe minority of people who wanted a peaceful protest to speak out about masks.
Obviously, like people across the country, we've received that proposal with interest by the Quebec government, but there's a lot more details that we have to hear on how this would work before I can make any comments on it. But I will remind people that we have been clear at the federal level about how important it is to get vaccinated, and we brought in very strong measures to ensure that travelers across the country need to be fully vaccinated. People coming into the country need to be fully vaccinated.
These are all his ideas. Before Justin Trudeau, the Harper government, Canada was known as a good place, the nicest people on earth. We still are. His government changed everything. And just in case you didn't know, go look up Bill 367. It's the most authoritarian bill in the free world right now in many, many decades. Go look at it. It aims to take people's religious right away from... Go look at Bill 367 and you'll see. Amazing, just the stuff that he comes up with. And by the way, until I did this one right here, I didn't know he was going to tax the unvaccinated. He led the charge, right? He led the world charge in this.
Federal public service needs to be fully vaccinated. These are things that we have continued to move forward on because the best path forward is vaccination.
Trudeau says his government...
Where I live in Ottawa, you had to wait at the hospital. I had to go to the hospital many times because of what the vaccine did to my gallbladder. I have a rare gallbladder disorder now. It's like permanent gallbladder attacks because of Moderna. Many people were forced or they had to quit their jobs. I have my first cousin is a nurse, and so is his wife, and they have now 4 children. And his wife decided to quit her job because she was pregnant and didn't want to get the vaccine. To me, that's really brave, and stuck with it, and she's still unemployed. I think Canada is still this way. I don't know all the ins and outs of what's happening with that right now, but they should at least ask people to come back. People leaving the military, all this type of stuff, what do they expect?
Government will continue to work with the provinces and territories to ensure as...
Maybe your thought process during that event there yesterday. They were about 20 feet away. You kind of pointed at them, you waved to them, you touched your heart to them. What was your thought process during that? And then they were cursing you out.
Yes, there were a lot of angry anti-vaxxers there, but there were also mingled in among them some supporters who were feeling perhaps beset, but brave enough to come out and stand beside screaming people who weren't wearing masks, or threatening all sorts of violence. And in that particular moment where I turned to look over the balcony, there was a group of young women, specifically racialized women, who were waving at me. And when I smiled and said, thank you for being there, and yes, greeted them, and they cheered and said, thank you, I was talking to them. And it is something that we have to reflect on, that even in Canada, where, yes, there are angry mobs who are threatening violence and hurling racist epithets, there are people coming out to stand beside them and say, we support you, keep it up. We know vaccines are the way through this. People who come out and will bear the shouts and the insults because they believe in choosing a better future than the one that those anti-vaxxers are fighting for. So yes, even at the risk of knowing that people thought I might be waving at those anti-vaxxers who I was basically ignoring, because I won't respond to anger with anger, I'll just ignore them. But I will
encourage and thank those Canadians who are willing to stand up for the path they know is right for them and their communities.
Prochaine question.
That fringe minority, racist, misogynist, racialized group was half the city. I don't know if you saw the protest, but there was tens of thousands. It's just unbelievable what, like, I have to say, as a Canadian, I'm ashamed. I remember he got voted in for one reason. Number one, Chinese interference. But it was a promise to legalize marijuana. Now look.
Reopen religious gatherings are emerging as hotspots now, with hundreds of infections linked to church services. Tom Yamas is outside a church here in Manhattan with more on this side of the story. Good morning, Tom.
Cecilia, good morning to you. Church services have resumed here in New York City, but with limited capacity. And when parishioners come here for morning service, they're going to see the new rules. Wear a mask, make sure to use hand sanitizer, and social distance. But across the country, pastors are making the tough decision to keep their churches closed. They're saying it's too dangerous to praise in person. This morning, worship whiplash. Some churches that reopened now closing amid new COVID-19 spikes. The New York Times reporting more than 650 coronavirus cases have been linked to nearly 40 churches and religious events across the country, many over the last month. Pastor Derek Allen of Mobile, Alabama, stopping in-person services earlier this month. He says as the number of COVID cases in his church started rising, even though the state didn't mandate it.
I do know that people really, really suffer with this particular disease. And so watching our people suffer and knowing that if we had an in-person service, that it was likely to spread even further into our congregation, that's why we decided to go back online.
Outbreaks linked to churches have happened in several states, recently in Oregon, Texas, West Virginia, and Tennessee. In June, Florida teen Carson Davis attended a church function with 100 other kids. According to the medical examiner's report, the 17-year-old who had pre-existing conditions didn't wear a mask or social distance. 3 days later, she started to feel symptoms. 10 days after that, she died. And back in March, just north of Seattle, more...
I don't know if you can do all blaming about that, because people are kind of breaking this everywhere you go. I remember when this started, I'm like, this is stupid, because this isn't a true lockdown. A true lockdown means people are in hazmat suits delivering stuff to your home. That's what a real lockdown is. You don't leave your home, you don't. Or at least you don't leave your building, like an apartment building. But I don't blame any churches for closing down, but surely the news picks up on them. And the thing was, I noticed they weren't picking on certain groups like BLM. Like, you know, we're burning your cities with hundreds or thousands of protesters. And they would say nothing about their masks. They wouldn't bring it up because they didn't want to offend, because it was part of the agenda. So here's something that I never saw done, because this was run by fear. They never, you know how they would give us the, you know, both on the internet and on TV every single day, the numbers of infections. By the way, I never got it. And but what they didn't do is show you, number one, it was mostly elderly people who die from it, and people with predisposing illnesses already, of age, mostly. But what was I going to say? My mind is gone right now. They never put up the flu every year. What if they were to put up those numbers beside the other? Hey, I'm not saying it wasn't bad in the beginning, but from what I heard, a lot, if not most, was just like a flu. Guys, the flu isn't fun to go through. It's painful. It hurts.
More than 50 members of a community choir became infected with COVID-19 after a rehearsal. 2 of the members died. The CDC calling that event a super spreader, finding that just one asymptomatic person infected 52 others.
BLM.
Violating Minnesota State Statute 609.50, obstructing the process, which will be a conditional crime.
You see some masks, but
Riots, protests and looting have broken out in Minnesota as Black Lives Matter supporters congregate together in support of Daunte Wright, who was killed by a police officer on Sunday. On Tuesday, police had made more than 60 arrests as protesters took to the street to beg for justice. 26-year-old Kim Potter, a white woman, was charged with the fatal shooting of 20-year-old Daunte Wright at a traffic stop on Sunday, not far from where George Floyd died. She was released from county jail after posting a $100,000 bail and faces a second-degree manslaughter charge. BLM protesters have been calling for defunding the police since last May when George Floyd was killed in police custody.
And we see the effects for that still now, because I did.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot! No peace! No justice! No peace! No
Joe Biden let this happen. Could have stopped it.
Minnesota State Patrol Colonel Matt Langer has slammed any protesters who are breaking the law. He said, "The behaviours that we continue to see are unacceptable and we are not going to tolerate them. It is not acceptable and it will not be tolerated if you choose to do criminal activity and destroy property and throw objects and make it unsafe for people to come and exercise their First Amendment rights." Fox News contributor Kayleigh McEnany has condemned the protesters and says it leads to more deaths.
The bottom line is all of these folks who are defending rioting are in fact enabling a much more violent situation. National Review cited a study that found that in the 5 cities that where a viral incident with the police, a viral moment takes off and results in rioting, that they actually saw 900 excess homicide deaths. So this leads to death, to destruction, to chaos. And
they know it.
Say to all of these rioters and to those enabling it, just the words of Martin Luther King, who said, they are socially destructive riots, they are self-defeating, and I will continue to condemn riots and continue to say, my brothers and sisters, this is not the way. Let's follow in the footsteps of the great Martin Luther King Jr.
And you know, one of the, I'm not going to say funny at all, it's not funny, but one of the realities, the facts, was that after I don't know how many months of doing it, the black leaders started to say, this, you know, smart black people in the community are saying, like, what are you doing? Like you're harming our communities. They're harming black communities more than they were white. And none of it made sense. We know it doesn't make sense, right?
Tonight, with a mounting national chorus decrying police brutality against black Americans, there's a new call for deep structural reform of policing across the country. Many are now demanding departments be defunded, dismantled, or outright abolished.
I want people to understand that we are committed to shifting resources to ensure that the focus is on our young people.
Today in New York, Mayor Bill de Blasio announced a plan to defund the NYPD by shifting money in the city budget from policing to social services. The move joins with Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, who recently agreed to slash up to $150 million from the police budget. At its core, defunding simply means divesting a chunk from a city's policing budget and rerouting it to community programs. Black Lives Matter co-founder Alicia Garza says reinvestment could be a turning point.
But what we do need is increased funding for housing. We need increased funding for education. We need increased funding for the quality of life.
See this woman here? I believe that's her. I have to see it in another video. I'm sure I have it. That money, she spent it for Black Lives Matter. Gave it to family, a whole bunch of other people. What a joke. What a joke. I forgot what else I was going to say. It's just so, you know, like, oh yeah, this was what I was going to say. Think of when that was. Think of how upsetting it was to see all this stuff on TV. Statues torn down, all the stuff they were taking down, throwing in rivers, smashing them, beating them. Think of the lawless feeling, right? And think of the Bible, right? Now look at it. It's so much worse. So we know the Bible's true. We know what they're saying is true. Lawlessness will increase. We know we're in the end days when.
Of communities who are over-policed and over-surveilled.
In Minneapolis, the city council is considering a move to reform the department. At a rally, Mayor Jacob Frey was booed for saying no to dismantling the police department. But policing can be dangerous. Saturday in Santa Cruz, California, a sheriff's deputy was shot and killed during an ambush.
In my 32-year career, this is the worst day that I've ever experienced.
Defunding is a nice catchphrase, but in reality, you're defunding police organizations that, for the most part, are already significantly underfunded. And that's going to be made worse because of the coronavirus economic impact that all states and cities...
Reprobate mind.
But as the outrage over the death of George Floyd and the plight of millions of Black Americans shifts from protest to change, the calls to defund are only growing.
New released tax filings show exactly how Black Lives Matter spent their donation money. William Lajeunesse has been digging through it all. What do you have for us, William?
Well, Stuart, here you have an $80 million foundation. Last year they had 0 board meetings and 1 board member. So that's not oversight. But the scrutiny is over use of donor money to hire friends and family. So 3 expenses stand out. BLM gave almost $1 million to Damon Turner, the father of the co-founders, Patrisse Cullors' child, to produce live events. $840,000 went to her brother, Paul, for security. Cullors also admits hiring her mother and sister to work at BLM's LA mansion.
I think it's important that people understand that
mansion.
While my brother is the head of security and my mom and sister did work at the property, it's not like I literally, opened up the bank accounts and was like, I'm bringing all my family and friends in. Folks had skill sets.
BLM also paid Shaloma Bowers $2.1 million for consulting. He and 2 others now serve on the board. BLM spent $1.2 million lobbying to impeach President Trump and eliminate bail. Cullors spent $73,000 on a private jet and used the LA mansion for 2 private parties, but later reimbursed BLM for both. BLM dispersed $25 million in grants to 31 groups. They banked $41 million, including $32 million in stock. Supporters blame any accounting flaws on inexperience.
You call that inexperience? Wow. And this is Fox Business? We know. And so think of this. When the good-willed Ottawa protests that began all the protests in this world, that God bless them, people started giving money, and what did they do? They froze their bank accounts for long periods of time. People who were donating from, you could be in another country. I think it was in the States too. Maybe it's just Canada and the States, but shut down Facebook. Obviously, Facebook had something to do with it. I heard the FBI had something to do with it, telling Canada to actually do that, telling them to do this. I believe that was the consensus, but they didn't allow money to a peaceful protest, but they did to a lawless, tear your city, burn it down protest. Think about that. Evil, good, good, evil.
I actually did not know what 990s were before all of this happened. Something's being weaponized against us that many people don't even know and honestly don't care about. It is such a trip now to hear the word, the term 990s. I'm like, ugh, it's like triggering.
Yeah, this 990 was the first time they've given any accounting over basically about 7 to 10 years at all, Stuart. Experts say family members should not receive donor money unless there are multiple bids and reviewed by an independent board. That didn't happen. As for accountability, BLM had 50,000 volunteers, 1 paid employees, and did not disclose any donors. Back to you.
I think you dug through that pretty thoroughly, William Lajeunesse, and that was good stuff. Thanks, William.
It seems to me, from the view of that person who was running it, no lives mattered in that. 25 million went off to help whatever groups, and I think it was in total like $90 million. That's just the way the world is.
Hey there. Is this seat taken? You work for Pfizer. My question for you is, why does Pfizer want to hide from the public the fact that they're mutating the COVID viruses?
Is this real life? I'm literally a liar. I was trying to impress a person on a date by lying. This is absurd.
Please don't touch me. Well, this is not. By the way, don't tell anybody.
Someone who's just working at a company to literally help the public. You up. You really did. Please bring the cops as soon as possible. I'm really very unsafe.
Can you please unlock your door?
No, don't let them leave.
Please unlock the door.
Give me what is going on here?
Please unlock. Please unlock the door. Please unlock the door. Unlock the door. We're trying to unlock the door. Unlock the door.
Does Pfizer not want the public to know that you guys are doing directed evolution?
Bro, what's going on here? That feels like an interview. I don't know, it's freaking me out. Giving these like flashbacks to that like sting organization of like those conservative people who like randomly go into organizations and then like befriend people who work in these organizations and then report them, which happened to people at Pfizer. So it like freaks me out when people start asking a lot of questions about work. It's so great.
Really? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Why would we back on this company?
Because I just want to know the answer.
They're not probably reporting me. Oh my god, Jason, that'd be horrible. You better not be reporting me or something.
Hey there. Is this seat taken?
What?
Hi. You work for Pfizer. My question for you is, why does Pfizer want to hide from the public the fact that they're mutating the COVID viruses?
Is this real life? What is happening here?
Why?
What is going on here? This is absurd.
Why does Pfizer want to hide from the public that they're mutating the COVID virus?
Oh my god.
You're on video. You're on video.
Pfizer ultimately is thinking about
mutating the COVID virus.
What is going on here? I need to call the police right now. This is not...
And I know this is virus, so I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what's going on either. This is ridiculous.
So you're on video. I'm a journalist.
Bro, first of all, I'm literally a liar.
He's on video.
Whoa.
You're saying we're exploring how the virus keeps mutating.
Yes,
one of the things we're exploring is
why don't
we mutate the virus?
I don't know what's happening. But I really need the cops here right now.
So
what is this?
Please do.
Please
do call the police. Please do call the police. Please do.
I can't do this here, guys.
Okay.
You have to leave. No, you can't do this here.
You're going to call the police. He's going to call the police for asking him a question. Please do call the police. Please do. He's on tape here talking about mutating the COVID virus. Can I talk to you outside about this?
Absolutely not. You're not even my likeness on this. What is your name? Because you fucked up. You really did. I'm about to sue you. This is absurd.
Please
you have someone mock me as if they're going on a date to record me? You don't even know my position at this. I was trying to impress a person on a date by lying. I was literally trying. I'm not even a scientist by background. You know that I came from a consulting firm that does business. This is absurd.
Please don't touch me.
This is absurd.
So,
please call the cops here.
Please do call the cops. Please do. Why would you call the cops if you have nothing to hide?
What he did in recording him, was that right? Probably not. You know, I'd be pretty mad if people were doing that to me. You know, there are times when people point their, you know, there's always people with devices here and there. You never know if you're being recorded. That's just what society is now. But considering what this has done to the globe and what Pfizer and what happened to me was horrible. I almost feel sorry for him, but kind of don't. I don't know. Let's just move on from this.
Hi. So he's obviously having one of the most outrageous reactions I've ever seen in the history of Project Veritas. He's threatening to call the police. Okay. He grabbed the microphone. The question is, why is he calling the police?
Guys, can you just respect my father's please
stop.
What?
They're gonna pay their bill. Can I get a check for their bill?
Wait, no, do not give her a check. No, don't let them leave. Because I want the cops to know this.
Do you want to put me in jail for asking you a question?
Yes, sir.
What is the intention of calling the police?
They have like no one's injured right now. We have several witnesses.
Could I talk to you, please, about this video?
Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 white people.
Why would you bring race into this?
Michigan, the state of Michigan was the site of an anti-Pfizer rally this week. Organizers say the demonstration was an effort to persuade Pfizer employees to speak out about the drug company. This in the wake of a viral video produced by Project Veritas, which secretly caught a top Pfizer executive saying the company is exploring how to mutate viruses so they can preemptively create new vaccines. Joining us tonight to discuss is Bob Moffitt, Senior Research Fellow for the Center for Health and Welfare Policy at the Heritage Foundation. Bob, great to have you with us. It seems Pfizer is really doubling down here. They say that they do not engage in so-called gain-of-function research. Curious, what's your take?
Well, what they've said is they do not involve themselves in gain-of-function research.
But we know now that they did.
Research that would enhance the lethality or the transmissibility of a very dangerous virus. So that's what they are saying. Now, what happened with Jordan Walker is he said, well, they engaged in genetic engineering to mutate viruses to test their potential against new vaccines and therapeutics. This is a classic area where Congress must step in. And what I'm suggesting is that the House of Representatives, the new Oversight Committee, subpoena Dr. Walker, subpoena the senior Pfizer.
No, it doesn't matter. There's so many people being bribed. There's so much money to be made. Hey, keep this going. Keep these drugs going. Keep this lockdown going. Plus Amazon, plus Walmart, plus whatever stocks all over the world. Like, it's just so troubling. And by the way, after all that, what is his name? Rand Paul questioning, what's his name again? You know who I'm talking about, right? About gain-of-function research, Fauci. And he just lied. And they were. Like, they admitted it in the end. It's just, yeah.
The topic that brings us here is deadly serious. The rise of hate and violence facing the 2S LGBTQI+ communities, including the drag artists, happening across Ontario and right in the nation has been alarming. There's been a dramatic...
Before I continue with this one, you know, I don't believe it's the way she says it is. Is there violence towards that? I'm sure in some instances there are, but I think we know by now that it's us who's taking the brunt of all this stuff. And you see all the shootings and stuff like this. Like, I think we have gotten to the point where we have accepted them. But they keep pushing us anyways. And anyways, it's an agenda. I have nothing against people in the LGBTQ community. I never did. But the stuff that they're doing in Canada is just disgusting. And like when like you see what you're looking at here, guys. This is I forget what branch of government this woman is in, but it's with policy. And anyways, they're going to charge you up to $50,000, $20,000 or $50,000 if you speak out against the LGBTQ. Like story hour type thing within 100 meters. These are the laws that Canada is making. This wasn't too long ago. And I don't mean to be rude, but what would my mother passed away in 2017. Just that span of time, almost 7 years ago. She wouldn't recognize anything. She'd be horrified. She would ask, "Is this Halloween?" Right here. I'm not trying to make a joke. Is this Halloween? What's going on, right? What's going on? Why are they doing this to us? And by the way, I have body dysmorphia associated with autism. But they don't put that in here. I saw a thing about that. And it's because it's an agenda.
Spike in violence and discrimination targeting the 2S LGBT community, a rise of over 60% between 2019 and 2021, all recorded by Statistics Canada. This information is also affirmed in anecdotal conversations I've had with so many people from Toronto to Thunder Bay. Literally everywhere in between, we are seeing community members rally, but also they are fearful of what happens next if we don't have protection from the government and law enforcement to take care of them. What we do know is that hate crimes are oftentimes underreported. And
what constitutes hate crime, by the way? Is it misgendering? Is it saying the wrong thing? People walking around on eggshells? They're trying to take away our Bill 367, our religious freedoms right now.
Even though it is underreported, what I've heard from our drag communities as well as their audiences, it has been alarming. I'm just going to list a few of the cities that we know and municipalities that we are aware of where protests anti-2S LGBT extremists have taken place. They've been targeted in Hamilton, Welland, Fort Erie, Guelph, Kingston, Kitchener, Gravenhurst, Brockville, Peel Region, Elora, Lambton, Sarnia, Sudbury, Sault Ste. Marie.
You can just name every city.
Pembroke, Pickering, Orillia, Whitby, Dryden, Ottawa, Woodstock, Peterborough, and right here in Ontario's capital, Toronto, the biggest city. For months now, as the 2S LGBT critic, I have been repeatedly asking the Ford Conservatives for their plan on what are they going to do to keep this community safe. I've asked them public questions during question period. I've spoken to the ministers in private, trying to urge them to take real action because we need real.
Tell me your honest opinion in the comments section. I'm being honest, I would stand up for anyone. It doesn't matter what community you're in. Do you think that's true, that they're being targeted? Or do you think they might be being targeted after like shootings and because of the agendas that are being pushed down our throats? But not only that, because of story hour reading to children and sexualizing children. It's no wonder they're being targeted. And I don't, yeah, so, you know, if that's hate speech, then like, listen, I'm on your side.
Action to keep our community safe. Their replies have been consistently vague, unfocused, and ultimately unhelpful. The drag communities are done waiting for this government to take real action in effective ways, and so is the Ontario NDP. This is why this afternoon I'll be introducing a new private member's bill co-sponsored by the other NDP Queer Caucus members, MPPs Terence Kernahan, Lise Bourgeois, and Jill Andrews. We are joined here also with MPP Caucus members Sarah Jama as well as Chris Glover. This new legislation in Ontario is designed to keep the 2S LGBT community safe. Drag artists, their audiences, the business, and the facilities that host those drag performances have been put at risk. And unless we put forward a strategy to protect them, Ontario's social, economic, and cultural richness is an LGBTQI+ community safety zone to prohibit within 100 meters of the property any homophobic, transphobic act of intimidation, threat, offensive threats, offensive remarks, protest, disturbance, and distribution of hate propaganda within the meaning of the criminal code. It also comes with it a penalty of $25,000 if prosecuted successfully. Secondly, the Act creates an Ontario 2S LGBTQI+ safety.
Just so you know, if you know any history at all of communism, starting from a democracy, this is how it begins. This is far from the only bill. They start proposing new bills.
Imagine choosing death over homelessness. That's what one St. Catharines man is contemplating. Tonight on City News, we continue to delve into medically assisted dying and how some believe it is their only option to living in poverty.
Are you afraid to die?
Who isn't? Yeah,
Amir Farsood has applied for medically assisted dying, known as MAID. He lives in constant agony due to a back injury, but has started the process for end of life because his rooming house is up for sale and he can't find anywhere else to live that he can afford. He barely survives on Ontario disability support payments, which are just over $1,200 a month. He doesn't want to die, but being homeless is not an option.
I know in my present health condition I would survive it anyway.
Farsood meets the criteria for MAID, physical suffering due to disability that cannot be relieved. His doctor, who knows Farsood's real reason for MAID is his fear of being homeless.
His real fear is the homelessness. I don't blame him. This is the way, the world is, like developed countries, like this is happening. And one of the reasons is because they let in too many people. Right? They let in too many people. They let in over 1 million people in 1 year in Canada. More than the illegals per population in a year. I have 4 pain suicide diseases. This is important. I have 12 pain disorders, of which 4 are acute abdominal, 4 pain suicide diseases. I was going to go to MAID myself, but then I found I was born again. God had other plans for me, and that's the way I see it. And the end is in sight. I mean, like a back injury, I don't know. It's hard for me to see it from that angle because I know that I'm able to do my life with 12 mostly very serious pain disorders. I'm not judging other people. That's not what I'm doing. I know it's about being homeless, as it just said there, and it's sad. Like irreversible, like the way that the wording is so much different than when I was applying. It didn't matter when I applied, and by the way, I didn't have my diagnosis at that time, but it didn't matter. I still had the condition, so I was in so much despair, and that's where I wanted to go. And quite frankly, I think I deserved it. I don't know what Canada is doing. All I can say to anyone that's planning on going to MAID, I hope you can find God, and I pray for you.
signed off on the application in August. Farsood needs a second to do the same. There's a 90-day waiting period. He believes he could potentially access MAID in about a month.
I don't wish to be dead, even with the pain, even with the meds. I still want to be here.
The CEO of Dying with Dignity Canada, a charity for end-of-life rights, says the organization has raised concerns about cases like this with the federal government.
The fact that people are feeling compelled to apply for MAID or to even ask about MAID because they can't get the basic fundamentals to live a life it's shameful. You know, as a country, as a government, we should be ashamed.
When medically assisted dying became legal in Canada in 2016, it was only for people facing imminent death. Accessibility was expanded last March.
We have created a system where ending of life is an easier and cheaper solution than actually investing in healthcare and social support.
Trudeau Lemons is a professor of law and bioethics at U of T. He argues MAID devalues the life of people with disabilities who often live in poverty.
I actually had not expected.
They're making it too easy. I was in a very bad state. I was about 100 pounds because I didn't know the things I was suffering from. I couldn't medicate them, except for opiates for my physical pain, well, things I couldn't figure out. And I remember, like, at the time, thank God, because if I would have been a year off, I would not be here, by the way. God's timing. But I was so angry that people who had things like Parkinson's and they were just in the beginning stages and they would, you know, they didn't want to get to a point of dementia or something like that. They were going like perfectly fine bodies and mind. And here I was, and I could barely take a step. I was in so much pain. Now we hear people, what is it, like 30,000 a year are being killed by MAID? There's a better solution. It's called God, Yahweh.
That it would go so fast, and that this particular issue.
And I'm not, you know, there are, and I'm not defending this, but you can't be in anyone's place that has terminal cancer, equivalent pain, every single second of their life. That meds barely even touch them, you know. It is a hard situation.
Of people living in poverty asking for medical assistance and dying would so rapidly take off in the Canadian context, and that physicians would sign off on it.
So what is the solution in your mind?
The solution is, in my view, to go back to the drawing table.
The Netherlands has monthly commissions that review troubling assisted dying cases. Canada does not. It does publish yearly stats. The latest shows last year MAID accounted for 3.3% of all deaths in Canada, or 10,064 people. That's a 32.4% increase over the year before. 65% of cases report cancer as the underlying reason. 81% of requests resulted in the administration of MAID. The average age is 76.
Listen to this one. This is what the bill I was speaking about, 367.
News channel and join the conversation.
So Canada's proposing a new bill, and it's called Bill C-367. And what it's proposed to do is remove religious exemptions to defend hate speech. So basically, if you are out on a street corner, like a lot of street pastors do and ministers, and you are preaching against something like the LGBTQ community, for example, that would now be considered hate speech, where before it was an exemption. So, you know, you were typically allowed to do that because it's freedom of speech. So again, this bill is now
freedom of religion,
that this would be
Bible.
Considered hate speech. And so with that, you will be arrested and can be jailed. Take a look at what Jeff King from International Christian Reform has to say about this.
First of all, it amends the criminal code, and it takes away some religious exemptions that protected Christians. So if you're in the United States We saw the same kind of thing with the Equality Act that the Biden administration was trying to pass. And basically, it creates hate speech laws. Some of those have already advanced in Canada, but Christians were protected. They said, well, if they're saying biblical things, or if they're saying things according to their faith, whether that's Quranic or biblical or whatever, they're protected. And this is the alarming thing, is that this strips those out. There is no protection. And as always, this is what the dictators and the despots do overseas to strangle Christianity or whatever faith. They say, oh, we have religious freedom, but not in the public sphere.
What would happen to...
By the way, I don't hear anyone in the States who does Christian channels talk about this. You see CBN, but any others, do people have any idea what this means? And it will make its way to the States. It's already in North America. In Canada, this is all under the Trudeau government. This is horrific. This is what the Bible speaks about. This is what we've been looking out for.
Them potentially if this were to pass.
Yeah, well, I interviewed a pastor recently who is a Canadian pastor who's been arrested a number of times for street evangelism. He's not even being obnoxious. He's doing street evangelism, completely legal. And then the cops show up. So if he is in an area where people know who he is and their LGBTQ crowd, they will cause a complete ruckus. And then guess who gets arrested?
So this really is a formality, because pastors and preachers and street ministers have been getting arrested for years. There's a very popular pastor who is always out. He travels all around Canada. His name is David Lynn, and he preaches on a regular basis. He tends to target the LGBTQ alphabet community, and he was arrested about a year or so ago in Toronto when he was out preaching against this lifestyle.
It's okay to do that.
What happened here?
But I don't love.
Someone sharing. If you don't like what someone has to say,
the law says we exist.
That's not the main issue.
Well, it is right now, because see all these people around here. So you are literally right now.
I'm not literally causing anything. No one told them to block the sidewalk. What did I do?
I'm back up. I'm with him. Back up.
So Pastor David Lynn is one of many, many, many pastors and preachers that have been arrested all over Canada. And as I said, this bill is just a formality. They really just want to push this into law and make it so that we cannot be out here standing up for God. So what I will say to this nonsense bill is that I guess I better give my size for my orange jumpsuit, because I too get into public debates and discussions about scriptures on a regular basis.
So this is like that thought crime thing. Remember that movie? What was it? Minority Report, right? With Tom Cruise. In the United Kingdom, I know they're, arresting people based off of preaching and also thought crime type stuff. Thought crimes, because you can't preach, you can't pray. They know in your mind what you're praying for, an abortion clinic. They're arresting people for this. What's in the United Kingdom is naturally Australia, Canada.
So what does that mean for me and the 69.1% Black Christian community and religious community in Canada that are out here? We are always out ministering. Everywhere you go, you see them with signs on street corners, and they are...
I'm an hour and a half into this already. These are just the things I see approaching. Like, this is... Historically, this is like, well, not year by year, but as it goes along. This is what I think. I wouldn't be surprised, number one, if my channel gets taken down within 1 year. 1 or 2 years if we're even here. I would not be surprised if I got a call or a knock on my door. that starts to happen when they start passing certain bills like this. And, you know, when that day happens, because I know it will, I'd like to see what their response is, telling them that, number one, I have autism, and that I suffer with other things that, well, we'll see what they say when that time comes.
Against the LGBTQ community and against other things that are going on, crime, all of the other things, racism, that go on in Canada. So if we are out here and we're quoting scripture, it's considered to be hate speech and therefore jail. Imagine a day where you can be jailed for standing up for God. Yet Canada is so quick to defend and protect the alphabet soup community. I'd like to see that same energy for Black people, which we're not seeing. I'll be keeping my good eye on this bill to see.
And by the way, it isn't about black, it isn't about white, green, yellow. It isn't about LGBTQ, gay, lesbian, trans, any of them. It's called an agenda. Woke is communism. Communism is anti-God. People don't think there is a good leader in the world right now somewhere. You know, they always say there's no good leaders in the world anywhere, but actually there is one, and it's in Canada. It's the opposition leader to Justin Trudeau. He's good. I'm telling you, I haven't seen a leader like him around. He's worth watching, and he absolutely, he beats Justin Trudeau. I'm not going to say destroy. I hate when people use all that. Rips open, he does this, he does that. He frequently beats Trudeau in debates. It's fun to watch.
We just received these documents that Trudeau has been covering up for years. Documents related to a massive security breach at the Trudeau government's most sensitive laboratory, where the most dangerous viruses and pathogens are studied and handled. We have learned that the Trudeau government's head of pathogens was collaborating with members of Beijing's People's Liberation Army who are responsible for bioweapons and bioterrorism. We cannot trust Justin Trudeau to keep our people and its country safe. We need a strong, conservative, common sense government. The cost, the crime, the corruption, and the cover-up. But now we know that he cannot protect our people or our country. We just received these documents that Trudeau has been covering up for years. Documents related.
This, by the way, would absolutely impeach a president, throw a prime minister out of office very quickly. This is a very serious matter that he covered up for years.
To a massive security breach at the Trudeau government's most sensitive laboratory, where the most dangerous viruses and pathogens are studied and handled. We have learned that the Trudeau government's head of pathogens was collaborating with members of Beijing's People's
right before
Liberation
COVID,
Army,
right before,
responsible for bioweapons and bioterrorism. We know now that a People's Liberation Army official was able to gain personal access, walk in the door, look at computers, and have access to all of our most important virological secrets. Let me, if you think any of this is hyperbole, read the report yourself. This is from government documents, the Trudeau government's own documents. It says here on page 142, Winnipeg lab scientist Dr. Chu, Social Pathogens Unit, the top person in that job, according to documents on page 242, quote, represents a serious and credible danger to the government of Canada as a whole, and in particular at facilities considered high security due to the potential for theft of dangerous materials attractive to terrorists and foreign entities that conduct espionage, damage the economic security.
Don't forget that Canada is just as advanced as the States or the UK.
239. Investigators assess that Dr. Chu communicated with foreign entities during her trips to China. The evidence obtained from interviews and from information collected from the electronic content of her devices reveal that this is indeed the case. As a subject matter expert with access to sensitive information and dangerous materials, Dr. Chu presents a realistic and credible threat to Canada's economic security when conducting repeated and clandestine meetings with foreign entities, end quote. Then it says Dr. Chu conducted joint research with the Major General Chen Wei of the People's Liberation Army, who, according to page 236, is a noted top virologist at the Academy of Military Medical Sciences and is China's chief biological defense expert engaged in research related to biosafety,
just a coincidence,
and bioterrorism. Bioterrorism, end quote. And these are documents, this is right out of the government's own documents. Trudeau, what did he do when he found out about this? Did he immediately inform Canadians of the breach? Did he fire anybody? No, no one was fired. Did he call an inquiry to get to the bottom of it? No, he didn't do that either. Instead, he covered it all up. He defied 4 parliamentary orders to release these documents. When the Speaker tried to get them, he sued the Speaker to cover this up. He said it was all for national security, but now we know from a committee composed of 4 members of Parliament, including 1 Liberal, and 3 judges, and I quote, the information appears to be mostly about protecting the organization from embarrassment for failures in policy and implementation, not legitimate national security concerns, and its release is essential to hold the government to account. In other words, there was no national security reason why we couldn't have had this before. It was only because Trudeau didn't want the embarrassment before an election. So what did he do then? He collaborated, knowing this, he collaborated with Beijing to buy a vaccine for COVID. Could you imagine if the deal that Trudeau wanted to sign with Beijing had gone ahead and we had procured China-made vaccines after learning this information? That's what was in this guy's head. And if you think for a minute, because I know there'll be all kinds of excuses, well, he's not responsible and how could he possibly take ownership of what happens in his government. Let me quote him. He has a document called Open and Accountable Government. And I quote, as head of government, the Prime Minister has special responsibilities for national security, end quote. It's his responsibility. This is his government's lab. It's not a random university lab. It's the top lab for the Prime Minister's public health agency. And he is exclusively responsible for the machinery of government as Prime Minister of the country. So this is on Justin Trudeau. I will add one last thing. Not only did he cover it up, not only did he try to get a vaccine from China after knowing this, he called a snap election to make sure that the voting would happen before this came out. And what happened in that election? Beijing interfered to help him win it. This is a man who says he admires China's basic communist dictatorship.
This government is just absolutely a downer on the people of Canada. By the way, I really like Pierre Poilievre. Seems like a really good guy. And I believe he's into the Bible too. He seems to know the scripture.
Thousands of migrants streamed across the U.S. border with Mexico into Eagle Pass, Texas on Wednesday. This has forced the overwhelmed city to declare a state of emergency. The mayor of the Eagle Pass, Rolando Solanas, has also declared a local disaster declaration. The mayor added that a separate 2,500-person mob crossed the border into the city illegally on Monday. This is on top of the approximately 7,200 other illegal crossers apprehended in the previous week. Salinas has said that the new mob, many of them from Venezuela, have overrun Mission Border Hope, which is the only migrant shelter in the border city. This comes 2 years after 15,000 Haitian migrants camped out under the international bridge in neighboring Del Rio, Texas. Eagle Pass has a U.S. Customs and Border Protection Processing Facility, which opened in 2022 with a capacity for 1,000 people. Many of those who are currently in custody are being held in an overflow facility at one of the 2 international bridges in the city. Salinas said that the huge influx over the last week, which is close to 50% of the city's 29,000 population, it's taken a toll on local resources, especially local police force and fire department. It is testing the limits of border patrol capabilities, encouraged by drug cartels who take advantage of the confusion. Eagle Pass Mayor says that the
let's be honest, like, this is just one of what? I'm just going to have to say tens of thousands. Out of millions, and most of those are men, I have that number way wrong. I just don't want to say, how many. Lawlessness will increase. The love will go cold. No wonder, man. Take a look at this. Those are expensive iPhones. What are you going to do? Touch them, you get charged. Mark the cop car right there. Do you wonder sometimes that the movies that they play, you know, like Batman Rising, you know, like, you know, Gotham City, like, this is Gotham City. It really is. I'm not joking.
Food and water for migrants in Midtown Manhattan, in what is becoming a familiar sight in New York City. Since late July, thousands of migrants have been bused from Texas to New York and other U.S. states. With shelters full, migrants are sleeping outside of the Roosevelt Hotel, a processing center for the city's shelters. Jean Carlos Vasquez is a migrant from Venezuela.
It's been a few hours since I arrived. They gave me water, some apples and other food, but no one has answered any questions I had. They just gave me a ticket with my number in line. No idea how long I'll have to wait.
Migrants mostly come from Africa and Latin America. Most of them don't speak English and don't know what to do, as many were told at the border they'll get shelter in New York. Natalia and Maxim Subotiny are from Russia. They hope to get political asylum in the U.S. After having spent 3 months in Mexico, they made it to New York.
At the Roosevelt Hotel, they told us, "Come here tonight. You'll have a room to sleep in. You won't sleep in the street." Yet the line doesn't move at all, so I don't know how long we'll be here.
New York authorities say about 90,000 migrants have arrived here from the southern border in the last year.
Yes, absolutely, there's been an increase, but to see that we are still operating with the mentality of emergency response as opposed to having better plans put in place has been incredibly distressing to see.
Activists.
Good luck, guys.
A
controversial children's book teaching graphic sex acts, complete with illustrations, making the rounds in school libraries and classrooms across the country, leaving parents and communities outraged. One concerned pastor tried to read the book at a school board meeting, but officials asked him to stop. Here's what he had to say about that.
If you don't want to hear it in a school board meeting, why should children be able to check it out of the school system? You see, we have perverts that are perverting our kids. And you all sit back smug in your chairs and celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion, but you don't want me to read it so you can hear it.
The Reverend John Emenchukwu spoke at that school board meeting, and he joins me now. Reverend, thank you so much for being here. They did not let you talk about the book, but I will. What's in this book?
This book is for children 10 years of age and up. This book is not soft porn, it's hardcore porn. It details...
In the interest of time, I've been doing this almost 2 hours. I'm just going to play as many as I can now.
A Venezuelan national dubbed the migrant influencer is at the center of controversy this morning. He has been using TikTok to coach migrants how to live in the U.S. by taking advantage of laws protecting squatters. Hannah Doba reports.
I hate seeing this.
In his most recent controversial TikTok video, Moreno is telling his followers to avoid living on the streets in the United States. They can, quote, invade empty homes and live there, saying under U.S. law, if a house is uninhabited, it can be seized, referring to squatting rights in our country. That video garnered almost 4 million views.
As we have more migrants moving into cities, more homelessness, we are going to see more of it, more squatting.
James Burling is a property rights attorney.
But they're talking about all the advantages that you can get from squatting.
1,200 cases so far.
That it's going to increase.
In past videos, the illegal migrant bragged that he came to the United States to vacation and now lives off U.S. taxpayers because he had a child in this country. He also tells his followers that he waits for Americans' hard-earned pension checks to come in every month. In another video, he is urging fellow Venezuelans to pay the fines of a 15-year-old migrant who allegedly shot a tourist in Times Square, saying, quote, today it could be him, tomorrow it could be one of you. But this recent video on squatting is making headlines, as Moreno tells his comrades that if they fix up an abandoned home that is deteriorated or in bad condition, they can get credits when the properties are sold. While Burling says that is not the case, the misinformation is now out there.
Well, I think publicity, like what we're seeing in TikTok and viral videos of that nature, are going to magnify.
Our price on pollution puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadian families in the backstop provinces. This is a fact recognized by the Parliamentary Budget Officer.
Once you factor in the rebate, but also the economic impacts, based on our modeling, the majority of households will see a negative impact as a result of the carbon tax.
As if we don't have enough trouble already.
Under the stop the auto theft that is.
You see what happens is, remember, the WEF make so many disasters that you don't know what's going on. Behind the lines are passing laws. They just want to kick you when you're down.
Is run rampant under this prime minister. He's now throwing a cape over his back, claiming that he's the hero on auto theft, but it's actually tripled in Toronto, and it's up by 100% in Montreal after he brought in catch and release and house arrest for car thieves, and after his incompetence allowed our ports to spin out of control and our cars to be exported to overseas crime and terror networks. Why doesn't he reverse his policies instead of another meeting?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Speaker, this is a serious situation. Canadians are concerned about this. And the Conservative leader just chooses to whip out his empty slogans and continue to blame everyone while we're getting to work. We're pulling together stakeholders and leaders from across the government to look at what more we can do. We've seen successes. CBSA agents have intercepted over 1,600 stolen cars last year in 2023, but there's more to do. We're going to continue.
The answer is catch and release. It's pointless.
It's necessary to keep Canadians safe and to keep crime down.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
To keep crime down. Crime is way up. Violent crime is up 40% under this Prime Minister. And today he had his ministers hold a big press conference as their solution. And in it, they put out a press release that said, and I quote, in 2022, approximately 9,600 vehicles were stolen in the Toronto area alone, representing a 300% increase since 2015, end quote. What happened in 2015?
What happened?
I know, he happened, Mr. Speaker. How can we make him unhappen and stop the crime?
I like pure party.
A couple questions each. Reuters, Andrea, for you guys the first question.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Chancellor Scholz. Mr. President, I have wanted to ask you about this Nord Stream project that you've long opposed. You didn't mention it just now by name, nor did Chancellor Scholz. Did you receive assurances from Chancellor Scholz today that Germany will in fact pull the plug on this project if Russia invades Ukraine? And did you discuss what the definition of invasion?
This is before the pipeline.
And then Chancellor Scholz, wenn ich Sie fragen darf,
if I may ask you, Chancellor Scholz, you said there was some strategic ambiguity that was needed in terms of sanctions. I just wanted to know whether the sanctions you are envisaging and the EU is working on, and the US as well, are already finished, finalized, or is there still work ongoing? And you're not really saying what the details are. Is that just an excuse for Germany maybe to not support the SWIFT measures?
Let me answer the first question first. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Schönen Dank für Ihre Frage.
Boy. And then the pipeline goes off. People say, well, what happened? Who did this? It was Putin, it was Putin, it was Putin. Open your eyes.